The trading post on the edge of the human colony world was usually quiet at night. Most people were already at home by the time the two moons rose high above the barren hills. Sam was one of the few still working. His small repair shop sat near the edge of the settlement where the dusty road met the open wilderness. The shop was dimly lit by a single yellow lamp that cast long shadows across the workbench. He was sorting through a pile of tools, trying to finish his day, when he heard something outside. At first, it was only the sound of soft footsteps on the wooden deck. Then a voice came, trembling and uncertain. "Please, human, help. My mom is trapped in the sky hunter's nest." Sam froze in place. He was not used to strangers showing up this late, and he had never heard such a strange request. Slowly, he turned toward the door. Standing there in the moonlight was a small alien girl. She was no older than 12 by human years. Her skin had a gentle green tint, and her large eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the light from the lamp. She wore a simple cloth dress and carried a small, worn bag over her shoulder. Her thin hands clutched the strap tightly, as if afraid she might lose. For a moment, Sam could not find any words. "Sky Hunter's nest?" he asked. "What are you talking about?" The girl stepped inside, her bare feet making almost no sound on the floor. She kept looking around nervously, as if afraid something was following her. "Please, I need help," she said. "My name is Leary. The Sky Hunters took my mom. She is still alive, but no one from my village will try to save her. They are all too afraid." Sam leaned against the workbench and crossed his arms. "Why come to me? I'm just a repair worker. I'm not a soldier or a hunter." Leary's eyes filled with tears, but her voice stayed steady. "Because I asked the others in your colony, and they all said no. They told me I was foolish to even try. But someone told me you once went into the high cliffs to fix the old weather tower. They said you are not afraid of climbing. Please, my mom is all I have." Sam looked at her closely. She was tired and dusty from travel, but her gaze held a quiet strength. He thought about the mountains. He had heard the stories about the sky hunters, giant winged creatures with long, hooked talons and eyes sharp enough to spot prey from a mile away. No one approached their nests. It was said that even the strongest hunters in the early days of the colony had been carried away by them. Still, Sam could see the desperation in Leary's face. She had probably walked for hours, maybe even all day, just to reach the trading post. He sighed and shook his head slowly. "I don't know, Leary. Even if I wanted to help, those things are dangerous. I've heard they don't just attack, they hunt in teams. If you get too close, you might not make it back." Leary's voice grew firmer. "I have seen their nest. I know where it is. I can guide you. I am small and I can hide well. I can help you get close without them noticing. I cannot do it alone, but with you we have a chance. Please, if you don't help me, my mom will die there." Sam turned away and began to put his tools back on the shelf, trying not to look at her. He did not like the thought of climbing into a sky hunter's nest, but he liked the idea of sending her away even less. She was right. Without help, she had no chance. "Tell me more," he said finally. "What happened?" Leary stepped closer. 2 days ago, my mom went to the hills to gather mountain fruits. She told me to wait at the river, but she did not come back. I searched for her and saw shadows in the sky. When I looked up, I saw the sky hunters carrying her toward the high mountains. I followed as far as I could and I saw the nest. It is high, but there are paths that go part of the way. The rest must be climbed." Sam rubbed his chin. The story made sense. Sky hunters were known to snatch animals and even people. The nests were usually built in impossible places, on sheer cliffs or floating rock spires formed by strange forces, in the planet's atmosphere. "Where is your village?" he asked. "A day's walk from here," she said. "I came alone. I brought food and water, but it is almost gone." Sam went to the door and looked outside. The night air was still. The twin moons shone brightly, casting pale silver light across the empty road. The wilderness beyond the trading post was silent. Somewhere far off, a lonely howl echoed in the hills. "Stay here tonight," Sam said. "We'll talk in the morning. I'll need to see this place myself before I decide anything." Leary's shoulders relaxed slightly, but her eyes still carried worry. "Thank you. Even if you only look, it means you care enough to try." He led her to a small room in the back of the shop. It was little more than a storage space with a bed, but it was warm and safe. He gave her a blanket and a cup of water. She thanked him softly and sat down, holding the blanket close. Back in the workshop, Sam sat at his workbench, staring at the old climbing hooks hanging on the wall. He had used them years ago to repair the weather tower on a high cliff. The memory of hanging above the empty air, wind howling around him, came back easily. That had been dangerous enough without giant winged predators circling above. Yet he also remembered the pride he had felt when he finished the job. He had done something no one else had wanted to do. Now Leary was asking for the same kind of courage, but with a life at stake. He stayed there for a long time, thinking about the risks. The sky hunters could see a climber from far away. They could dive faster than a man could run. If one grabbed him, there would be no escape. But he also thought about Leary's small voice saying, "My mom is all I have." When the lamp burned, low, Sam finally stood. He looked toward the room where Leary was sleeping. In the morning, he would follow her to the mountains. Even if it was dangerous, even if it seemed impossible, he could not just send her away. He locked the shop door and walked to his small sleeping cot. Outside, the moons began to sink behind the mountains, and far away, a sky hunter's cry echoed through the night. Sam lay awake for a while, listening. He wondered if the sound came from the very creature that had taken Leary's mother. If it did, then he would soon be facing it. But for now, the night was quiet, and the decision was made. The sun rose slowly over the colony's edge, painting the dusty hills in pale gold. Sam stepped out of his shop and felt the cool air before the heat of the day arrived. Leary was already awake, standing quietly near the road with her small bag over her shoulder. She looked toward the mountains in the distance, their jagged peaks hidden under thin clouds. "You did not sleep much," Sam said as he approached her. "I could not," she answered softly. "Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mom in that nest." Sam nodded. "Let us see these sky hunters for ourselves before we decide how to get close." They walked together out of the trading post and followed a dusty track that curved toward a ridge a few kilometers away. The colony buildings soon faded behind them, replaced by scattered rocks and low bushes. The land was silent except for the crunch of their boots on the ground. Leary led the way, moving quickly despite her small size. Sam noticed that she knew the paths well. She avoided certain patches of dry grass and skirted around strange mounds that seemed harmless, but gave off a faint, sharp smell. After an hour, they reached the base of a rocky hill. Leary pointed upward. "From there, we can see their hunting ground." They climbed carefully until they reached the ridge. The view opened wide. In the far distance, the mountain range rose like a wall of stone and cloud. Sam took out a pair of binoculars from his bag and scanned the sky. At first, he saw nothing but blue and white. Then a shadow moved between the clouds. It was followed by another. Soon he could make out the shapes clearly. They were huge creatures, with wings so wide they looked like sails in the wind. The wings beat slowly and powerfully, carrying the beasts across the sky with ease. Their bodies were lean but strong, covered in dark feathers that glinted in the sunlight. Long tails trailed behind them, balancing their movements. Sam watched as one of the sky hunters folded its wings and dropped toward the ground at incredible speed. A moment later, it rose again, carrying something in its talons. He could not tell what it was from this distance, but he guessed it was an animal. "They are faster than I imagined," Sam said. "They can see from far away," Leary replied. "Their eyes are like sharp glass. They can find even the smallest movement on the ground." Sam lowered the binoculars and studied the mountains. He could see dark shapes clinging to the cliff faces high above. Some looked like huge nests made of twisted branches, bones, and strange fibers gathered from the land. One of them was larger than the rest, built on a narrow ledge that jutted out from the cliff wall. "Which one is their main nest?" Sam asked. Leary pointed without hesitation. "That one. The big one with the split branch sticking out. I saw them carry my mom there." Sam studied the nest again. It was positioned in a place almost impossible to reach. The cliff under it was sheer and smooth. Above it, jagged rocks hung like teeth. The wind whipped around it in sharp gusts, making the branches sway. How do they even build something there? Sam wondered aloud. "They are not just beasts," Leary said. "They work together. They bring branches from the deep forests, tie them with vines, and pack them with mud from the riverbanks. They know how to make their home strong against storms." Sam thought about that. The sky hunters were dangerous not only because of their size and speed, but also because they were clever. They understood how to protect their young and defend their nests. As they sat on the ridge, the wind shifted, carrying a deep echoing cry from the mountains. The sound rolled across the land like thunder. Sam felt it in his chest as much as in his ears. Leary's eyes flickered with fear, but she did not look away. "Does your village have hunters strong enough to fight them?" Sam asked. "They have. Hunters," she said. "But none will go near the nests. Many years ago, 2 men tried. The sky hunters tore them from the cliffs and dropped them into the canyon. Since then, no one dares." Sam's gaze stayed fixed on the distant nest. "Then we will have to be careful. If we get too close too soon, they will know we are there." Leary nodded. "I know paths that lead halfway up the mountain. Some are hidden by tall rocks. We can use them to avoid being seen. But the last part is open air. We will need to climb fast and quiet." Sam considered the challenge. He had climbed high cliffs before, but never with something watching from above. The sky hunters would be a constant threat. As the morning went on, they watched the creatures hunt. They worked in pairs, or sometimes in threes. One would dive low, flushing prey into the open, while another would swoop in to grab it. The third circled high, scanning for danger. It was a pattern, almost like a plan. "They are guarding their nest," Sam said. "They will not leave it undefended." "That is why we must be clever," Leary replied. "If they see us from far away, they will come before we reach my mom." Sam finally lowered the binoculars and stood. "We know where they are. We know how they hunt. Now we must think how to get close without them knowing." They made their way down from the ridge and rested in the shade of a large rock. Leary took a small flask from her bag and drank before passing it to Sam. The water was warm but refreshing. "What about at night?" Sam asked. "Do they hunt in the dark?" "Sometimes," Leary said. "But they do not see as well then. They sleep in turns. 1 or 2 stay awake to watch the sky while the others rest." Sam rubbed his chin. "That gives us a chance. We could climb under the cover of darkness. It would still be risky, but maybe less than going in the day." Leary's eyes brightened a little. "Yes, and the wind at night is softer. The noise of climbing will be harder for them to hear." The idea began to take shape in Sam's mind. They would need ropes, climbing hooks, a light that could be covered when not in use, and enough food for at least 2 days. If they were lucky, they might reach the nest before sunrise. By the time they returned to the trading post, the sun was already high. Sam knew the real journey had not yet begun, but he could feel the weight of it pressing on him. The sky hunters were more than just large birds. They were predators of the highest peaks, rulers of the sky, and guardians of their home. Facing them would take more than courage. As he looked once more toward the mountains, Sam knew one thing, for certain. If they failed, there would be no second chance. The sun had not yet reached its highest point when Sam and Leary began climbing the lower slopes of the mountain. The ground under their boots changed from loose dirt to rough stone. The air felt thinner and cooler, carrying the scent of snow. From the peaks above, small streams of clear water trickled down the rocks, making some patches slippery. Leary led them along a hidden trail that wound between tall stone spires. The spires rose like ancient guards, their shadows stretching far across the ground. In some places, the path narrowed so much that Sam had to turn sideways to fit through. His pack scraped against the stone, and he could hear the soft clink of the climbing hooks inside. They moved in silence, each step taking them higher. Far below, the foothills spread out like a green and brown patchwork. The colony was no longer visible. The wild land surrounded them completely. As they rounded a bend, the path ended at a wide ledge. From here, the view opened to the deep valley below. Sam could see strange rock formations, shaped like twisted hands reaching toward the sky. He also noticed the wind was stronger here, pushing against his body and making his balance more difficult. Leary crouched low and motioned for Sam to do the same. "This is one of the open places," she whispered. "They might see us here if they are hunting." Sam nodded, keeping low as they crossed the ledge. He scanned the sky but saw nothing except drifting clouds. The sound of the wind filled his ears, masking other noises. Halfway across, a sudden shadow swept over them. It moved fast and silent at first, then came the rush of wings. Sam looked up in time to see a huge shape diving toward them. The sky hunter was far larger than he had imagined. Its wings spread wide, each feather shining with dark metal-like hues. Its head was long and sharp-beaked, with eyes that glowed like polished amber. The talons at the end of its legs were curved and powerful, each one longer than Sam's hand. "Down!" Sam shouted. He grabbed Leary and pulled her against the rock wall, just as the creature's talons sliced through the air where they had been standing. The wind from its wings almost knocked them off their feet. The sky hunter rose again, beating its wings hard, circling above them. Its cry echoed across the mountains, sharp and deep. Sam felt the sound in his chest like a drumbeat. It saw. "Us," Leary said, her voice tight with fear. "It will not stop now." Sam's eyes followed the creature as it climbed higher. He could see its movements change. It was preparing to dive again. He pulled the plasma cutter from his pack, holding it ready. "Stay close to the wall," he told Leary. The second dive came fast. The sky hunter dropped straight toward them, its beak open, its talons outstretched. Sam fired the plasma cutter toward its head, not to hit but to flash bright light. The sudden flare startled the beast. It twisted mid-dive, wings flaring wide, to slow its descent, and pulled away. Sam knew it would return once its eyes adjusted. He had only bought them moments. "Move!" he urged. They ran along the ledge toward the shelter of a narrow crevice in the rock. The sky hunter screamed again, the sound chasing them. Just as they reached the crevice, the shadow fell over them once more. The beast passed so close that Sam could see the texture of its feathers, each edge sharp as a blade. Inside the crevice, the wind was less fierce. The space was tight but offered some protection from above. Sam pressed his back to the wall, breathing hard. Leary knelt beside him, clutching her small bag. "It is trying to drive us out," she said. "It knows we cannot stay in the open." Sam peered toward the ledge's edge. The sky hunter was circling, its sharp eyes scanning the rocks. Another shape moved in the clouds above it. A second sky hunter. "They hunt together," Sam murmured. He realized the danger had doubled. The second would take position above while the first flushed them into the open. They waited, hoping the creatures would lose interest. Instead, the first one swooped low, brushing its wingtips along the cliff face. Dust and small stones rained down into the crevice. The second hovered higher, ready to strike if they moved. "We cannot stay here forever," Leary whispered. Sam's mind raced. They needed a distraction, something to make the hunters think they had gone another way. He searched his pack and found a spare coil of rope. He tied a heavy climbing hook to one end and handed it to Leary. "When I say throw this, as far as you can toward that slope," he told her, pointing to an angled section of rock beyond the ledge. "The sound might make them chase it." Leary looked doubtful but nodded. They waited for the first hunter to rise again. When it did, Sam shouted, "Now!" Leary hurled the rope and hook with all her strength. The metal clanged against the rock, slope, and tumbled down the side. Both sky hunters turned sharply toward the noise. The first dove toward it while the second followed to see what had moved. "This is our chance," Sam said. He grabbed Leary's hand and pulled her out of the crevice. They ran along the ledge, keeping low, moving toward a narrow path that led upward between two jagged peaks. The wind roared around them, but they did not stop. Behind them, the hunters realized the trick and cried out in frustration. Their wing beats thundered closer, but the narrow path was too tight for them to enter. At full speed, Sam and Leary slipped inside just in time, pressed between the rocks as the shadows passed overhead. They climbed quickly through the narrow passage until the sounds of the hunters faded. At last, they emerged onto a sheltered plateau high above the ledge. Here the wind was softer and the view stretched for miles. The hunters circled far below, unwilling to risk the tight climb. Leary dropped to her knees, breathing hard. "We were lucky," she said. Sam looked down toward the valley, then toward the higher peaks ahead. "Luck will not last forever. Next time, they will not be fooled so easily." Leary stood and faced him. "Then we must reach the nest before there is a next time." Sam tightened the straps on his pack and glanced toward the distant cliff where the giant nest clung like a dark crown. It was still far, but each step had brought them closer. The first encounter had shown him the danger they faced, yet it had also shown they could survive if they stayed quick and clever. The mountain waited, and the sky hunters would be watching. But Sam knew they had to keep moving. By the time Sam and Leary reached the upper slopes of the mountain, the sun had begun to sink toward the horizon. The sky turned soft shades of orange and gold, while the wind carried a sharp chill. The path they followed had narrowed to little more than a crack along the cliff face. One wrong step would send them falling into the deep valley below. Leary moved ahead carefully, testing each foothold before trusting her weight to it. Sam followed close behind, his rope tied to her waist. The mountains here were silent except for the whistling wind and the occasional scrape of their boots against stone. When they reached a small ledge, Leary stopped and crouched. She pointed toward the far cliff where a giant shape rested. The sky hunter's nest was larger than Sam had imagined. From here, it looked like a dark, tangled fortress clinging to the rock. It was made of thick branches, twisted vines, and pieces of bone. The structure seemed impossibly balanced on a narrow ridge, yet it looked solid enough to withstand storms. "There," Leary whispered. "That is where my mom is." Sam adjusted the strap of his pack and studied the nest. He could see movement inside, a shadow shifting near the center. For a moment, he thought it was one of the hunters, but then he noticed it was smaller. The movement was slow, almost weak. "That could be her," Sam said. Between them and the nest was a wide gap of open air. The only way across was along a narrow natural bridge of stone. The bridge curved upward slightly before reaching the nest's ledge. It was exposed to the open sky with no cover at all. "They will see us if we cross in daylight," Sam said. "They will see us even faster in daylight," Leary agreed. "But at night, the wind is softer. If we move quietly, we can reach the nest before they wake fully." Sam considered the risk. The sky hunters would surely have guards. They had seen how they hunted together, but there was no other way. If they waited too long, Leary's mother might not survive. They stayed hidden on the ledge until the sun slipped behind the peaks. The sky deepened into a rich blue, and the first stars began to appear. The wind grew calmer, carrying the faint sound of distant wing beats. When darkness fully covered the mountains, Sam gave the signal. They moved quickly to the start of the stone bridge. The surface was uneven and narrow, forcing them to step slowly and keep their balance. Sam kept one hand on the rope, tied between them, ready to pull Leary back if she stumbled. Halfway across, a faint rustle reached his ears. He froze and looked up. A shadow moved above them, blending into the night sky. The shape was too small for a full-grown hunter. It was likely a young one, perched close to the nest. They pressed forward, careful not to draw attention. As they neared the ledge, the nest towered above them, blocking out part of the stars. The structure gave off a faint smell of damp wood mixed with something wild and sharp. Leary led the way up a sloping section of the ridge until they reached the outer edge of the nest. Up close, the scale was even more impressive. Some branches were thicker than Sam's arm, woven together so tightly that even the wind could not pry them apart. Pieces of shiny stone, feathers, and bones were woven into the walls. They crouched, low, listening. A faint breathing sound came from within, slow and heavy. Somewhere deep in the nest, one of the hunters slept. Another faint sound came from nearby, a soft cough, weak but human. Leary's eyes widened. "That is her," she whispered. Sam pulled the plasma cutter from his pack. "Stay behind me. We will cut through quietly." He pressed the cutter's tip to the woven branches, letting out short bursts of heat. The material resisted at first, but soon gave way, leaving a narrow opening. The smell of scorched wood drifted into the cold air. Through the gap, Sam could see a small open space inside the nest. In one corner, a figure lay curled beneath a rough covering of vines and feathers. Her skin was pale and her breathing was shallow. Even from here, Sam could see the resemblance to Leary. Leary pushed forward, whispering, "Mom!" The woman's eyes fluttered open. For a moment, they were filled with confusion, then widened in recognition. "Leary," she breathed. Her voice was rough, but the relief in it was clear. "We came to take you home," Leary said. She reached through the gap and touched her mother's hand. Sam widened the opening, careful not to make noise. Just as he was about to help Leary's mother through, a low rumble rolled through the nest. It was followed by a rustling sound like massive feathers shifting. Sam froze. A shadow moved deeper inside the nest. One of the sky hunters was stirring. He looked at Leary and mouthed the word "quiet." They moved quickly, slipping Leary's mother out through the gap. She was weak and could barely stand, so Sam lifted her onto his back. The extra weight slowed him, but he knew there was no time to rest. They turned toward the stone bridge. Behind them, the rumble grew louder. A deep, piercing cry split the night air. "They know," Leary whispered. Sam started across the bridge, moving as fast as he dared with the added weight. Leary stayed close, glancing back toward the nest. In the darkness, two massive shapes emerged. From the woven walls, wings unfolding with a sound like sails catching wind. The hunters cried out again, their voices echoing across the mountains. The air stirred as they prepared to take flight. "Hurry!" Sam urged. The stone bridge felt even narrower now. The wind had picked up again, tugging at their clothes and making every step more dangerous. The cries of the hunters grew louder, closer. The beat of their wings rolled over them like distant thunder. They reached the far side just as a rush of air swept past them. One of the hunters had dived, missing them by a few meters. Its talons scraped against the rock, sending sparks into the night. Sam pressed forward, guiding Leary and her mother toward the shelter of the jagged peaks. The hunters wheeled above, their eyes glowing faintly in the starlight. "We need cover," Sam said. "There is a place ahead," Leary replied breathlessly. "Not far." They stumbled across uneven ground, moving as fast as they could. The cries of the hunters followed them, growing sharper with each pass. But the shelter was close, and Sam refused to look back. The nest was behind them now, but the real danger was still in the sky. The cold mountain wind whipped around them as Sam carried Leary's mother on his back. Each step was harder than the last, but he kept moving. Leary stayed close, her eyes darting toward the dark shapes circling above. The cries of the sky hunters rang across the cliffs, warning that the chase was far from over. "Just ahead," Leary whispered. "There is a crack in the rock. We can hide there." Sam followed her lead, moving along the uneven path. Loose stones skidded under his boots, and the weight on his back pulled him off balance. The glow of the hunter's eyes flickered in the night sky. One swooped low, its massive wings stirring the air like a storm. Sam pressed against the cliff, shielding Leary's mother from the wind and the talons that reached toward them. The hunter pulled away, letting out a cry that echoed down the mountainside. A second shape rose behind it, and Sam knew they were working together again. One would attack from above while the other came from the side. Leary pointed toward a narrow gap between two boulders. "There," she said. "That is the hiding place." They reached it just as a shadow fell over them. Sam ducked inside the crack, pulling Leary and her mother with him. The space was tight, barely enough for the three of them. The rock walls pressed cold against their backs. Outside, a rush of air swept past as the hunter dived by. For a moment, it was quiet, except for the sound of their breathing. But Sam knew it would not last. The hunters would not give up easily. "They will try to reach us," Leary whispered. "They can wait for hours if they must." Sam shifted Leary's mother carefully against the wall. She was weak but conscious, her eyes open and watching. "We need to move when they are not ready," he said. "If we stay here too long, they will trap us." He peeked out through the gap. The first hunter was perched on a ledge not far away, its wings folded, but ready. The second was circling above, watching for movement. Sam's mind worked quickly. They needed a distraction again, something that would draw both hunters in the same direction. He reached into his pack and pulled out the last of the climbing rope. At the end, he tied one of the heavy metal hooks. "I will throw this far from here," he said. "When they chase it, we run." Leary frowned. "It might not work twice." "It will if I throw it far enough," Sam said. He waited for the moment when the circling hunter moved to the far side of the ledge. Then he leaned out and hurled the rope and hook with all his strength. The metal clanged against the rocks far down the slope, bouncing and scraping loudly. The perched hunter's head snapped toward the sound. It launched itself into the air, its wings beating hard. The second joined it, both diving toward the noise. "Now," Sam said. They slipped out of the hiding place and moved quickly along the narrow path. Sam kept to the inside, using the cliff wall as a guide. Every few steps, loose stones rolled underfoot, but he managed to keep his balance. The path bent sharply and led to a series of jagged ridges. Leary guided them through, her movements quick, despite the danger. Behind them, the cries of the hunters grew louder again. They had found the trick and were returning. Sam pushed harder, his breath coming fast. The ridges gave way to a sloping stretch of rock that led downward toward a shadowy forest below. The trees were tall, with thick silver leaves that formed a dense canopy. If they could reach it, the hunters would have trouble following in the dark. The slope was steep, and Sam had to half carry, half slide with Leary's mother on his back. Leary stayed close, helping him keep balance. The wind roared in their ears, and the sound of wing beats grew nearer. One of the hunters screamed, a sharp sound that sent a shiver down Sam's spine. He glanced back to see it diving straight toward them. "Down the slope," Sam called. They moved as fast as they dared, the loose rocks shifting under them. Just as the hunter closed the distance, they reached the edge of the forest. Sam ducked under the first low branches, pushing through the thick leaves. Leary followed, and the forest swallowed them in shadows. The cries of the hunters echoed outside, but the trees shielded them. The branches were too close together for the massive wings to pass through. The predators circled above, frustrated. Sam found a small clearing under a cluster of giant roots. He lowered Leary's mother gently to the ground. She leaned against the roots, breathing heavily but safe for the moment. Leary knelt beside her. "We are safe here, Mom. Just rest." Sam listened to the sounds outside the forest. The hunters were still calling to each other, their voices distant but not gone. He knew they would keep watch over the mountain for hours, maybe days. "They will wait for us to leave the forest," he said quietly. "We must move while they are watching." "The wrong place." Leary looked at him. "You mean travel through the forest to the other side?" "Yes," Sam said. "It will take longer, but they cannot follow us inside." They rested only a short while before setting off again. Sam carried Leary's mother, though every step felt heavier. The forest floor was soft with layers of fallen leaves. Strange plants glowed faintly in the dim light, casting a pale green hue on the path. Small creatures rustled in the undergrowth, their eyes flashing briefly before vanishing. The deeper they went, the quieter it became. Even the calls of the hunters faded until only the sound of their own footsteps remained. After hours of slow travel, they reached a stream that wound through the forest. The water was cold and clear. Sam let Leary's mother drink before taking some himself. "We should follow the stream," Leary said. "It will lead us out of the mountains." Sam agreed. They moved along the bank, the sound of the water guiding them. The stream curved gently, leading them farther from the cliffs. Above the treetops, the stars began to fade with the coming of dawn. When the first light touched the forest floor, Sam looked back one last time. The mountains stood high and cold in the distance. Somewhere among them, the sky hunters still circled, waiting for prey that would not return. They had escaped, for now, but the journey back to the colony was still ahead. The cold mountain wind whipped around them as Sam carried Leary's mother on his back. Each step was harder than the last, but he kept moving. Leary stayed close, her eyes darting toward the dark shapes circling above. The cries of the sky hunters rang across the cliffs, warning that the chase was far from over. "Just ahead," Leary whispered. "There is a crack in the rock. We can hide there." Sam followed her lead, moving along the uneven path. Loose stones skidded under his boots, and the weight on his back pulled him off balance. The glow of the hunter's eyes flickered in the night sky. One swooped low, its massive wings stirring the air like a storm. Sam pressed against the cliff, shielding Leary's mother from the wind and the talons that reached toward them. The hunter pulled away, letting out a cry that echoed down the mountainside. A second shape rose behind it, and Sam knew they were working together again. One would attack from above, while the other came from the side. Leary pointed toward a narrow gap between two boulders. "There," she said. "That is the hiding place." They reached it just as a shadow fell over them. Sam ducked inside the crack, pulling Leary and her mother with him. The space was tight, barely enough for the three of them. The rock walls pressed cold against their backs. Outside, a rush of air swept past as the hunter dived by. For a moment, it was quiet, except for the sound of their breathing. But Sam knew it would not last. The hunters would not give up easily. "They will try to reach us," Leary whispered. "They can wait for hours if they must." Sam shifted Leary's mother carefully against the wall. She was weak but conscious, her eyes open and watching. "We need to move when they are not ready," he said. "If we stay here too long, they will trap us." He peeked out through the gap. The first hunter was perched on a ledge not far away, its wings folded but ready. The second was circling above, watching for movement. Sam's mind worked quickly. They needed a distraction again, something that would draw both hunters in the same direction. He reached into his pack and pulled out the last of the climbing rope. At the end, he tied one of the heavy metal hooks. "I will throw this far from here," he said. "When they chase it, we run." Leary frowned. "It might not work twice." "It will if I throw it far enough," Sam said. He waited for the moment when the circling hunter moved to the far side of the ledge. Then he leaned out and hurled the rope and hook with all his strength. The metal clanged against the rocks far down the slope, bouncing and scraping loudly. The perched hunter's head snapped toward the sound. It launched itself into the air, its wings beating hard. The second joined it, both diving toward the noise. "Now," Sam said. They slipped out of the hiding place and moved quickly along the narrow path. Sam kept to the inside, using the cliff wall as a guide. Every few steps, loose stones rolled underfoot, but he managed to keep his balance. The path bent sharply and led to a series of jagged ridges. Leary guided them through, her movements quick, despite the danger. Behind them, the cries of the hunters grew louder again. They had found the trick and were returning. Sam pushed harder, his breath coming fast. The ridges gave way to a sloping stretch of rock that led downward toward a shadowy forest below. The trees were tall, with thick silver leaves that formed a dense canopy. If they could reach it, the hunters would have trouble following in the dark. The slope was steep, and Sam had to half carry, half slide with Leary's mother on his back. Leary stayed close, helping him keep balance. The wind roared in their ears, and the sound of wing beats grew nearer. One of the hunters screamed, a sharp sound that sent a shiver down Sam's spine. He glanced back to see it diving straight toward them. "Down the slope," Sam called. They moved as fast as they dared, the loose rocks shifting under them. Just as the hunter closed the distance, they reached the edge of the forest. Sam ducked under the first low branches, pushing through the thick leaves. Leary followed, and the forest swallowed them in shadows. The cries of the hunters echoed outside, but the trees shielded them. The branches were too close together for the massive wings to pass through. The predators circled above, frustrated. Sam found a small clearing under a cluster of giant roots. He lowered Leary's mother gently to the ground. She leaned against the roots, breathing heavily but safe for the moment. Leary knelt beside her. "We are safe here, Mom. Just rest." Sam listened to the sounds outside the forest. The hunters were still calling to each other, their voices distant but not gone. He knew they would keep watch over the mountain for hours, maybe days. "They will wait for us to leave the forest," he said quietly. "We must move while they are watching." "The wrong place." Leary looked at him. "You mean travel through the forest to the other side?" "Yes," Sam said. "It will take longer, but they cannot follow us inside." They rested only a short while before setting off again. Sam carried Leary's mother, though every step felt heavier. The forest floor was soft with layers of fallen leaves. Strange plants glowed faintly in the dim light, casting a pale green hue on the path. Small creatures rustled in the undergrowth, their eyes flashing briefly before vanishing. The deeper they went, the quieter it became. Even the calls of the hunters faded until only the sound of their own footsteps remained. After hours of slow travel, they reached a stream that wound through the forest. The water was cold and clear. Sam let Leary's mother drink before taking some himself. "We should follow the stream," Leary said. "It will lead us out of the mountains." Sam agreed. They moved along the bank, the sound of the water guiding them. The stream curved gently, leading them farther from the cliffs. Above the treetops, the stars began to fade with the coming of dawn. When the first light touched the forest floor, Sam looked back one last time. The mountains stood high and cold in the distance. Somewhere among them, the sky hunters still circled, waiting for prey that would not return. They had escaped, for now, but the journey back to the colony was still ahead. The forest grew thinner as the sun climbed higher. The trees became fewer, and patches of open sky appeared above. Sam moved carefully, his legs aching from the climb and the weight on his back. Leary walked beside him, supporting her mother, who still looked pale but stronger than before. The sound of the colony reached them faintly, the hum of machines, voices carried by the wind, and the distant clang of tools. It was a reminder of safety after days spent in the wild. Sam glanced at Leary. Her eyes were tired but hopeful. "We are close now," he said. She nodded quietly. "Thank you for helping us. Without you, my mother would still be trapped." Sam shook his head. "You showed more courage than I have ever seen. I only followed your lead." As they stepped onto the dirt road that led back to the colony, a group of villagers came rushing toward them. Faces filled with worry changed to relief when they saw Leary and her mother. An older woman pushed through the crowd. It was Leary's grandmother. Tears filled her eyes as she hugged her daughter and granddaughter tightly. The villagers helped Sam set Leary's mother down gently. She smiled weakly, her eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you," she said softly to Sam. The leader of the colony approached. "You have done something brave," he said. "No one has faced the sky hunters and lived to tell the tale." Sam looked toward the mountains still visible far behind them. It was not just bravery. It was hope and trust. The colony began to prepare a place for Leary's mother to recover. Sam offered to help build a stronger shelter where she could heal safely, away from the reach of the sky hunters. Days passed, and Leary's mother grew stronger. The hunters no longer circled so close to the colony, as if they understood the humans, would not give up. Sam and Leary spent time talking about the journey and what had been learned. They knew the mountains were still dangerous, but they also knew that humans could face the unknown and survive. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Sam looked out toward the sky. A single shadow crossed the orange light. It was a sky hunter, flying high and free. But this time Sam did not feel fear. He felt respect. The creatures were part of the wild, fierce and proud, yet humans were different too. They fought for their own in ways that the hunters could not understand. Leary came to stand beside him. "We will protect our home," she said. Sam smiled. "Together." The mountain air was calm and the stars began to shine. The story of the human and the alien girl who faced the sky hunters was now part of the colony's history. It was a story of hope, courage, and the strength found when worlds come together.